Okay guys, here we go. I keep getting asked to do a tutorial video on bees. How to start, how to automate them, what frames do, all of that stuff. So what I'm going to try and do is do one giant tutorial video here from start of the game to automation so you can see everything in between. Okay, so when you first start up a brand new Minecraft world and you want to get into bees, the first thing you need to do is to run around and find the different hives. Now these hives are found randomly all throughout the world, and if you want to get the bees out of these hives, you can do it a few different ways. The easiest way is to make a scoop, and I believe that is 5 sticks and some wool. Might not be 5, but yeah, the scoop is the easiest way, just sticks and wool. Another good way to get a whole bunch of princesses for later on is to set up a quarry. You will find a lot of the bees in these hives, and when the quarry destroys those hives, you get the bees out of them. So that's a good way to collect a lot of princesses. Later on in the game, if you have a mining laser, you can also mine these hives with a mining laser. You will get the bees out of it just the same as if you were to use a scoop. So now that you got your bees, what do? All right. So the very first thing that you need to do in order to do anything with your bees is to get an apiary. Now, in order to get an apiary, you have to either craft this or you can run around, find a village, and if the village has an apiarist, generally they have 2 apiaries in the backyard. So you can steal those and use those as your own, or you can craft your own. And to do that, you need 3 slabs, an impregnated casing, and 5 planks. So the impregnated casing is probably the hardest part of this to do. And in order to make an impregnated casing, you need a squeezer to make seed oil. The seed oil needs to be piped into a carpenter. And in order to make the impregnated casing, you need 8 logs. It can be any type of wood, doesn't have to be oak, but just 8 logs in here, plus seed oil, get you an impregnated casing. So it's a little bit of work to make one of these apiaries, but once you make one, you are good. You don't have to make it again unless you want to set up a whole bunch of bees. Okay, so the next problem you need to tackle if you're going to create your own apiary is how to get that seed oil. So you need a squeezer and you need to squeeze certain things to get seed oil. Now, in order to get that, you can use either flax, corn, henequen, pumpkin, melon, regular wheat seeds, and if you get into the forestry tree breeding, you can do cherries, walnuts, chestnuts, and later on, once you get a bunch of the different bees, you can create what's called farmed bees, and those produce seed drops, and you can squeeze seed drops to get seed oil, so you don't even have to worry about any of these other methods of getting it. Now, these seeds down here, the flax, corn, henequen, they produce 0.15 millibuckets of the seed oil, so you're going to need a whole lot of this stuff in order to get any decent quantity of seed oil. The pumpkins and the melons and the wheat seeds are slightly better, but not by much. If you're going to start out, I would probably recommend doing either melons. Actually, no, I would recommend doing melons because each melon slice you can turn into the seeds, and that's probably the easiest way and the fastest way, I would imagine, to get seed oil at the very start. Once you get into tree breeding, obviously, the chestnuts here have the biggest quantity of the seed oil, and this is what I would recommend for mass producing the stuff. But eventually, you'll probably want to make the farmed bees and get the seed drops, and that way you don't have to worry about growing trees and harvesting them and all that stuff. So there you go. That's how you get your seed oil. Okay, so now you have your apiary, and you put some bees in here. You found some bees, you put them in here, and now you got these bees here that have been bred. So what are these bees? Well, you don't really know much about them. This one's a forest princess, and this one's a rocky drone. So that doesn't tell you much. Now, there's an item you can create called a beealyzer, and this guy will tell you everything you need to know about bees. Now, in order for this to work, you do need honey drops. You get these honey drops from using centrifuge on honeycombs. So once you get a bunch of these honey drops, you can stick those right into your beealyzer right here, and you can place your bees here, and I'll tell you everything you need to know about the bees. Now, in order to make one of these bee elysers, you do need a carpenter full of water, and you need 4 tin, 2 redstone, 2 glass panes, and a diamond. I guess the diamond makes this a little hard, and the redstone, you have to go mining before you can get to this point, but once you have this, you're good to go. So if we take a look at the bee elyser, we can look at this forest princess, and we can see that it is actually a forest and a rocky. It says right here in blue text, forest rocky hybrid. So it's not a purebred bee. It's not actually a forest. It's half and half. You can see all the different stats of these bees. And if we look at this rocky one, we can see it's probably a forest rocky as well. Yeah, rocky is the active trait, inactive is forest. So these are not purebred bees. What you want to do is breed these bees until you pure breed them, until the stats are the same. It doesn't say forest rocky, it'll just say forest. And same for these, if you want just the rocky, you just say rocky. You want to pure breed these, and eventually you want to get them to the point where when you breed them, their offspring all stack. And at that point, you know that they always produce the same bees every single time. Now, once you get them to the point where they stack and you're always producing the same bees, you can go into automation. This is pretty much the basic way of doing it. You can get an apiary, and then you need a wooden pipe. And depending on how far you are in the game, you're going to need either a redstone engine, or you can use the autarkic gate. Just set it for items in inventory to energy pulse, and that'll pull all the items out of the inventory and send them on their way. Now, after the wooden pipe, I have a golden pipe here, and then the important thing is this apiarys pipe. The apiarys pipe is what makes the automation work. On the apiarys pipe, on the white path, we set it to any bees, so any bees that get pulled out of the apiary go right back in there. If the apiary is full, the bees can't go that way, so on the black path, we have anything set. This allows all the items that the bees create to go this path, and any extra bees that don't fit go down that way. So all your items end up in that chest or wherever you connect this apiarys pipe to. Now the apiarys pipe are kind of expensive. It's a diamond pipe and 2 propolis. You get the propolis from either squeezing honey or some of the different bees. I think it might be the ones that make stringy combs make propolis. There's a few different ways to get that. Okay, so now you have your basic automation set up, and you want to move on from apiaries to alvearys. Well, there's some things you got to do to get to that point. So you went out into the wild and you found yourself a couple of hive bees. You got a meadows here and a rocky. So you breed those two together and you get a chance of producing a common bee. So now you bred up a bunch of these common bees and you're ready to move on to the next breed. So you take the common bee and you mix it with a rocky bee and you get a chance of making a cultivated. Okay, so you breed this up, you get a few of these. You want to make sure you actually do have a stockpile in case your mutation doesn't work correctly. You don't want to lose it and have to start all the way over from the beginning. So it's always good to have a few of these around so you can continue to try and breed to the next one. So you have your cultivated bee and you have your common bee. You breed those together and you can get a diligent bee. Okay, so same thing, breed this a while, get a few of those, and then you want to breed your diligent with a cultivated bee, and then you get an unwary, and then you breed your diligent with the unwary, and you can get an industrious bee, and this guy makes pollen. This is important. Okay, so now you have your common and cultivated, you bring those together. You can also get a chance of getting a noble. I think this one, let's see, the common and the cultivated. Common and cultivated has a chance of making diligent, and it has a chance of making noble. So you gotta try for a while to get both of those. Then you take the noble, put it with a cultivated, and you get a majestic. The noble and majestic together can make an imperial, and these guys make royal jelly. This is also important. Okay, so now you have your bees that make the pollen, and your bees that make the royal jelly. So you want to make an alveary. Well, this is the recipe to do it. It is 1 royal jelly, 3 wooden planks, 2 wax, and the pollen. The wax you also get from centrifuging the combs from the bees, same as you would get the honey drops. Okay, so In order to do that, in order to make the alveary, you're going to need liquid honey. So you take honey drops and put it in a squeezer. You can get propolis this way. The squeezer pipes the honey over into the carpenter, and you put all of this stuff in here, and you can make a scented paneling. All right. Well, if that wasn't enough, you need 8 scented panelings and an impregnated casing, those guys we made the apiaries with, and you get 1 alveary block. Awesome. Well, kind of, because this alveary block doesn't do anything by itself. You actually need 27 alveary blocks and 9 slabs on the top to make an alveary, and these are pretty cool. These are worth all the trouble to get them. But the difference that you can see here with the alveary is we have the spot for the bees to go and all the stuff that it makes. We have a spot to put the princess and the drone, but you'll notice that there's nowhere to put frames. We haven't talked about frames yet, but we will in just a second. So with the alvearies, you can make what's called a frame block in this, or I'm sorry, a frame housing. This guy, you can replace one of the alveary blocks with this, and you can put a frame in it. And in order to do that, you need a thermionic fabricator to make the golden electron tubes. You need an alveary block here and 3 iron. This can be crafted just on a crafting table, and you get 1 frame housing. Okay, so let's talk about frames for a moment. So we have different frames here. You can make a regular untreated frame with 8 sticks and 1 string, just like this. Give an untreated frame. You can make an impregnated frame with 8 impregnated sticks and 1 string. An impregnated stick is made using seed oil and a carpenter and 2 logs stacked on top of each other. String and 8 of those. Kind of expensive. The proven frames, you only get those from NPC villagers, and it costs 1 emerald for 6 of them. You get traded 6 for 1 emerald. So, yeah, that's expensive, but it is a way to get the proven frames. Now, these 3 frames right here, the only difference between them is how long they last. The untreated frames won't last very long. The impregnated frames last longer, and the proven frames last the longest. So these are the ones you really want if you're trying to, mass produce things from your bees. So we have different frames here. We have chocolate frames, which is 1 impregnated frame and 4 cocoa beans, just like this. Makes a chocolate frame. Now these are good if you want to kill off your bees really fast. It shortens their life. The more of these chocolate frames you have in the hive, the faster the bees die. There's also a soul frame. This is 1 impregnated frame plus 1 soul sand. Just like that, makes a soul frame. This increases the chance of mutation for your bees. Now, I really never used these. I tried it before and I didn't really see much of an improvement. Maybe I was doing it wrong, but yeah, that's what the soul frames are for. Now, over here we have, this is the recipe for the impregnated sticks. 2 oak wood, I guess any type of log, with seed oil will make 2 impregnated sticks. So yeah, it's pretty expensive to make the impregnated frames. You're probably going to want a tree farm of some type going all of the time just to keep up with the wood production. Okay, so now you have your frame block, and you have your frames, and you have your alveary. Well, what you want to do, and what I have found out, is if you put 6 frame housings in your alveary, you get the best production value from your bees. Now, each of these frame housings requires its own frame, so yeah, 1 emerald to fill this all up with the proven frames. Remember that. Kind of expensive. But to set up the alveary like this, you need 6 frame housings, 21 alveary blocks, the plain ones that are not, crafted into the frame housings, and 9 slabs. Now, while we're speaking about this, you can actually replace pretty much every single block on the apiary with a frame housing if you choose to, except for the 3 in this top row right here, the 3 all the way across, and the 2 on the sides. So basically, if you're looking from the top, the plus shape on the top, you cannot replace those, but the corners could be replaced, and all of the blocks around the bottom could be if you really wanted to. but I found that if you do more than 6, you're basically wasting frames. Okay, so now let's talk about inserting frames into the apiary. Or I'm sorry, into the alveary. There's a few ways you can do this. You can use pipes and pipe them directly in, which does work. If you only have 1 frame housing, that might be a way to do it. If you have 6 frame housings like this, it gets a little bit more complicated. So what I have found the best way to do that is to use a factorization router. Now with the router, you can insert pretty much into any machine that's connected to. We're going to need a machine filter on here to specify that we want it to go into the frame housings and not into the alveary, because if you don't specify that, you'll get frames here or here. You don't want that. That's where your bees go. So we put a machine filter upgrade on here. We're going to say insert into the top sides, and we're going to say we want it to go to the tile extra B alveary. Now you can choose different items here for it to go into. It sees a lot of the different items around, but we don't want any of those. We only want to go to the tile extra B alveary. It doesn't really make sense, but that's what these frame housings are. So if we take one of these impregnated frames and we stick it in this machine filter, you see it disappears, and it has actually gone into this frame housing here. So if we take all of these guys, we can stick it in here and it will just insert them into all the available slots. Now there's only 6 of those, and I had 7 of these frames, so there's nowhere for this one to go. Now if this breaks, it gets replaced. So this is a really good way to set up automatic frames. The router will only insert into machines that are connected, meaning since this frame housing is touching this frame housing, it can see this, and so on and so forth. All these are touching, so it can see them all. So the next line of thought would be, okay, so let's just stick all of my different alvearys together and let's insert into all of them. Well, you can't really do that. If you were to take 2 alvearys and stick them next to each other, they never turn into an alveary. You can't. The multi-blocks have to be separated by at least 1 block of space. Otherwise, yeah, they don't turn into an alveary. Okay, so if you separate them by 1 space, the router won't see the other alvearys. But what you can do to fix that is by putting different items between them that have inventory slots, like for instance a furnace, a chest, or a disk drive. I personally like the disk drives the best just because of the way they look. So now that we have our alvearys connected together, the router can see all of them. The next step would be to get frames into all of them. Now, in order to do this, I'm using 2 routers here. This router on the bottom has a machine filter just like the one over here did. So it's going to take anything that goes into its inventory and find the next available spot. Okay, so I'm using a second router here. This one is set to, well, not right now. It's going to be set to extract from the barrel above that has all of our frames. And we're going to say insert, or we're going to be extracting from the barrel. We're going to be extracting from the bottom sides, and we're going to say eject to the bottom. So it's going to take all the items from this barrel, and it's going to try and put them into this router down below. Now this router down below, any item that goes into its inventory fills up these slots. Okay, so we can see that right now. If I take this impregnated frame and I put it into this bottom one, it just goes to the first available slot. It could be in any of these 12. And I saw the particles come over here, so it looks like, yeah, right here is where that frame ended up. And all these are empty. Okay, so what we can do is if we set this router to extract from that barrel, you can see the items are going down and it's filling up this inventory here. And every one of these frame housings should now have frames in it. So that is a very good way to automatically insert frames into all of your alvearys. Okay, another way to do it is if you want to save on a router, say you don't want to use the ejector upgrade, you don't have another machine filter, you can use an autarkic iron AND gate. This also works. So you can pull directly from the barrel, and we want it to pulse only if there's space in the inventory, And we only want to pulse if the pipe is empty. Let me grab a couple of these real quick. Oops, guess I'll grab them all. Okay, so we'll fill up this barrel, and it's only going to take one at a time. And as the frame goes over here, it's not going to pulse again until that pipe is empty. And then it's going to do it again. The reason you want to do this is because these frames do not stack, and this only has one inventory spot available. So if multiple frames try and enter at the same time, there's nowhere for those frames to go, you're going to have frames all over the ground. So you definitely need an autarkic iron and gate to only insert one at a time. So if the inventory fills up and there's nowhere for those frames to go, this won't send another one. Okay, so let's talk about automating the alveary. It's very similar to automating an apiary. You can stick the wooden pipe anywhere you want as long as it's touching one of these alveary blocks. It can be on the side, it can be on the bottom, wherever you really want to put it. Just for demonstration purposes, I have it on the front here. So you want the wooden pipe, and you want it to go into an apiarys pipe just like we did on the apiary. Now in this case, the green path is going back into the hive, into the alveary. So you want the green path to be any bees. And in this case, we have our inventory where we want all of the extra drones and all of the items on top of that apiarys pipe. So that is the white path. And on the white, we have anything. So any bees that cannot go into the hive get redirected into the chest. All the items that get pulled out go into the chest. Now, I use an autarkic gate. When there's items in the inventory, I tell it to energy pulse. If you don't have these gates, you can just use a redstone engine and leave that on all the time, and it'll do just the same thing. Alright guys, so that pretty much is Bees 101, getting you from the very start to automated alvearies. It does take quite a long time, and it's a lot of fun. I hope you guys found this video useful, and thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.